Good morning, students. Today's lesson is A House is Not a Home by Jan Gaudiaso. Before we start the lesson, let us know what is the meaning of a house and what is the meaning of a home. What's the difference between a house and a home? A house is a building made up of concrete materials, whereas a home is a place where people live with love and affection. Love and concern bind the people living in the house. So a house can be made a home by the people living inside. This is the only difference. You should know that. Okay? This lesson tells us the problems of teenagers who face the adjustment issues in their life. So let us start the chapter. The story reflects the challenges of being a teenager and the problems of growing up. Whatever challenges the teenagers witness, you are also in that age. You might be going through certain problems. And the important problem is adjustment problem. You might not be adjusting in every situation. So how to do that? How to overcome that? Let us know through this story. So here, how does the author overcome his problems? This is the story of the author Jan, and let us know the different small incidents mentioned here. My first year of high school felt awkward. After leaving junior high at the head of my class, with all the seniority the upper grade levels could afford me, it felt strange starting over as a freshman. The school was twice as big as my old school, and to make matters worse, my closest friends were sent to a different high school. I felt very isolated. So here the author tells his issue of moving towards the high school. He had the adjustment problem over there. So he says here that it was very strange for him to start afresh in a new school. I missed my old teachers. Let's see these problems he is facing here. I missed my old teachers so much that I would go back and visit them. They would encourage me to get involved in school activities so that I could meet new people. He could not adjust with his new teachers. So often he went to meet his old teachers and he was counseled by them to get involved in school activities. They told me that in time I would adjust and probably end up loving my new school more than I had my old one. And his teacher told him that he would love his school if he is involved in school activities. And it would happen gradually, not all of a sudden. They made me promise that when that happened, I would still come by and visit them from time to time. I understood the psychology in what they were saying, but I took some comfort in it nonetheless. He was finding the comfort zone, but he could not get in that new school. One Sunday afternoon, not long after I had started high school, I was sitting at home at our dining room table doing homework. One day he was doing his homework at his dining table. It was a cold and windy fall day and we had a fire going in our fireplace. As usual, my red tabby cat was lying on top of all my papers, purring loudly and occasionally swatting at my pen for entertainment's sake. So he was doing his homework at the dining table and the fire was burning at the fireplace and his pet cat was lying and he was moving here and there, hitting his pen for entertainment's sake. She was never far from me. I had rescued her when she was a kitten. Oh, she was a female cat. So he said that he rescued her, and somehow she knew that I was the one responsible for giving her the good life. My mother kept stoking the fire to keep the house nice and warm. Suddenly, I smelled something strange, and then I noticed it, smoke pouring in through the seams of the ceiling. While this activity was going on, while it was a very simple and usual day for him, he had a strange smell. He smelled something burning, and the smoke was coming through the seams of the ceiling. He could see the smoke, and the smoke began to fill the room so quickly that we could barely see. So the room was engulfed with smoke. It was engulfed in smoke, and groping our way to the front door, we all ran out into the front yard. By the time we made our way outside, the whole roof was engulfed in flames and it was spreading quickly. I ran to the neighbors to call the fire department while I watched my mother run back into the house. He was there with his mother and the pet. When he noticed that the room was engulfed in smoke, he took the step, and it was a fast step. He went out to call the fire department. Okay? My mother then ran out of the house carrying a small metal box full of important documents. And you can understand the situation when the house is blazing. The house caught fire. So his mother came out with a box full with the documents, the important documents. She dropped the case on the lawn and in a crazed state ran back into the house. She kept the box outside and again she went into the house. I knew what she was after. My father had died when I was young, and I was certain that she was not going to let his pictures and letters go up in flames. They were the only things that she had to remember him by. Still, I screamed at her, "Mom, no!" His mother went inside again to collect the images, the pictures, the photos of her husband, who was no more. And this child did not like this. He started screaming. I was about to run after her when I felt a large hand hold me back. It was a fireman. By that time, the fireman came. I hadn't even noticed that the street had already filled with fire trucks. I was trying to free myself from his grasp, yelling, "You don't understand, my mother isn't there." He wanted to rescue his mother who was inside the house which caught fire, but the fireman stopped him. He held on to me while other firefighters ran into the house. He knew that I wasn't acting very logically and that if he were to let go, I would run. He was right. So that man was holding him tight. He did not allow him to go inside, but the child was in fear. "It's all right, they all get her," he said, and by that time other firefighters went inside the house. He wrapped a blanket around me and sat me down in our car. Soon after that, a fireman emerged from our house with my mom in tow. He quickly took her over to the truck and put an oxygen mask on her. I ran over and hugged her. All those times I ever argued with her and hated her vanished at the thought of losing her. So mother was rescued. She was brought in the truck with a mask. That mask was of oxygen, and this child hugged his mother, and he said, "Why did you go inside?" "She is going to be okay," said the fireman. "She just inhaled a little smoke." The fireman told, or you can say consoled, this little child that his mother is fine. His mother just inhaled a little smoke, and then he ran back to fight the fire while my mother and I sat there dazed. They were very much shocked. I remember watching my house burn down and thinking that there was nothing I could do about it. The house was burnt and they could not do anything. They were quite helpless. But this was very shocking for both of them. 5 hours later, the fire was finally out. Our house was almost completely burned down, but then it struck me. I hadn't seen my cat. Where was my cat? Much to my horror, I realized that she was nowhere to be found. Then all at once it hit me. The new school, the fire, my cat. I broke down in tears and cried and cried. I was suffering loss big time. The child noticed here that as soon as he joined the new school, all these bad incidents happened with him. His house was burned, he lost his cat, and he could not adjust in his new school. So he was in a loss, in a big loss. He was very sad. The firemen wouldn't let us go back into the house that night. It was still too dangerous, dead or alive. I couldn't imagine leaving without knowing about my cat. He was very much anxious about his cat. He thought where it had gone. But the firemen did not allow him to go inside the house to find his cat. Regardless, I had to go. He wanted to go. We piled into the cars with just the clothes on our backs and a few of the firemen's blankets and made our way to my grandparents' house to spend the night. They could not carry their belongings. They could not take their belongings away from the house because the house was in fire. So they were brought to their grandparents' house. They had just the clothes on their body and a backpack, you can say. The next day, Monday, I went to school. When the fire broke out, I was still wearing the dress I had worn to church that morning, but I had no shoes. Next day, he went to school in the same dress, not in his uniform, and in the same shoes which he was wearing the previous morning. I had kicked them off when I was doing my homework. Means he had no shoes because he removed his shoes while doing his homework. So he had no shoes when he reached his school. They became yet another casualty of the fire. So I had to borrow some tennis shoes from my aunt. Why couldn't I just stay home from school? My mother wouldn't hear of it, but I was totally embarrassed by everything. He went to school without shoes, and it was the situation of embarrassment for him. He was very much ashamed. My mother wouldn't hear of it, but I was totally embarrassed by everything. The clothes I was wearing looked weird. His clothes were not tidy. I had no books or homework, and my backpack was gone. He did not have his backpack also. I had my life in that backpack. The more I tried to fit in, the worse it got. Was I destined to be an outcast and a geek all my life? He had a very bad feeling. What a life he had. He was without shoes, without his school bag, without his books, and he reached the school. Such an ashamed situation he was in. That's what it felt like. I didn't want to grow up, change, or have to handle life if it was going to be this way. I just wanted to curl up and die. What a sad feeling he was going through. He did not want to live because he had a big loss. He was very much ashamed of his situation. So he did not want to overcome that situation. This is what here is the theme of the lesson, adjustment problem. the teenagers have such problems. They could not adjust until unless they are guided. I walked around school like a zombie. Means, you can very well understand the situation of Jan here. He felt that he was a zombie. Everything felt surreal. Everything was very much strange for him. He was in a bizarre condition. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen. All the security I had known from my old school, my friends, my house, and my cat had all been ripped away. All his dear and near ones had gone. He lost his cat. He lost his cat. He lost his old friends. Means he was in a new school, so he had no connection with his old friends. And what he felt that these were his security of life. This is what he went through. Okay. Now in the next part of the chapter, you will go through in the second video.